Welcome back to the space where we go deep about what is happening underneath what we call it failures. I want to say something that is going to feel wrong before it feels true. You do not need more to grow. No more content, no more offers, no more hours, visibility, strategy, launches, more funnels, more systems. No more of the things the entrepreneurship culture has convinced you that they are the variables that they're standing between where you are and where you're called to be. You do not need to do more. And I know how that lands in your body because I know that the women in this community, I know that you are not sitting still. I know that you are already working, already showing up, already producing, giving this thing everything you have on the days when everything you have feels like barely enough. I know that the suggestion to do less is not just counterintuitive. For many of you, it is offensive because the narrative you have been living inside, the one that has shaped every decision, every schedule, every season of your building, says that the growth is a direct function of our output. That more doing produces more results. That if the results are not where you want them, the answer is do more. And I am here to tell you with love and with clarity the kind of data that it comes from sitting inside this work with real women who are building real things. That the narrative is the single most expensive lie in entrepreneurship. Not because doing is unimportant. Doing matters. Consistency matters. Strategy matters. Showing up, it matters. But doing more of the wrong things from the wrong internal state, organizing around the wrong identity does not produce growth. It produces volume, and volume is not growth. Growth is expansion of what is possible. And what is possible is not a function of what you do, it is a function of who you are while you do it. What you believe about what you're allowed to have, what your nervous system treats is safe, and what it treats is dangerous. What your identity says about what you're capable of, not as an aspiration, but as an operating assumption. When those internal variables are misaligned, and I am going to show you today exactly what misalignment looks like and how to recognize it in your own building. More doing does not fix them. It conceals them temporarily at a cost that is always higher than it shows. That is the conversation we're having today. And today we're going to the root of why more is not the answer and what is the answer. Let's name the trap first because it is sophisticated, it is socially reinforced, and is designed in the most insidious way possible to look exactly like the solution to the problem it is actually creating. And the trap is this: when growth stalls, do more, pause more often, build more offers, reach more people, optimize your system, consume more education, invest in more courses, more coaching, more masterminds, more tools. Keep the motion continuous, keep the calendar full, keep putting more and more. Because a moving target is harder for doubt to hit, and a full schedule is harder for fear to penetrate. And that trap works for a season. Because motion feels like progress, because a full to do list feels like direction, because the exhaustion at the end of a long day of doing feels to a woman who has organized her worth around productivity like proof that she's taking the mission seriously, that she is earning the growth that she's asking for. But here's what the activity trap conceals from you: activity and growth are not the same thing. And more activity does not always, does not even usually produce more growth. What it produces is more activity, which it generates the feeling of movement, while the underlying variables that are actually determined by the trajectory of the business remain entirely unchanged. Think about the last time you had a period of intense, high volume activity in your business. The launch didn't require everything. The sprint where you were producing content every day, responding to the questions, serving every client at the highest level you can possibly sustain. The season where from the outside, your business had never looked more productive. Now ask yourself, was that season sustainable? And the results, the actual meaningful compound results, match the energy you pour in? For most of the women that I work with, the honest answer is no. Not because the work was wrong or the strategy was wrong or the calling was misaligned, but because the activity was happening on the top of internal architecture that it has not been built yet. And without that architecture, without the belief system, the nervous system regulation, the identity that it says, I am the woman who grows at this level, the activity produces results that match the internal structure, not the level of effort that is applied. You cannot out-effort a misaligned identity. That is the specific. It's structural reality underneath the activity gap, and the proof is already in your history. Think about the seasons where things grew, really grew, not because you were working harder, but because something inside it had shifted. Something has aligned, something clicked into the place that made the same level of activity produce a completely different level of result. You have those seasons. And I know you have, because everyone who has built anything real has experienced the difference between doing from alignment and doing because of exhaustion. The results are not comparable. The experience is not comparable. And the sustainability is not comparable. The difference was not the doing. The difference was who was doing it and from where. Drop the word more in the comments right now if you have been in this activity trap, if you have been pouring more and not seeing the return you know the effort deserves. Not because I need engagement, because naming the trap you have been inside is the first act of stepping out. I read the comments, so tell me if you are here. Now, I want to give you the real framework, not the cultural one, the real one. The one that women who build sustainably, who have grown without burning, who expand without fracturing, are actually operating from. Whether they can articulate it or not, growth requires 4 things, and none of them are about volume. Requirement number 1, an identity that it has already made room for the result. This is the most foundational requirement, and it is the one that is most completely absent from the conventional growth conversation. Your business cannot sustainably grow beyond what's your identity, the beliefs that it's allowed to become, not because of some mystical law of attraction, because a very specific, well-documented neurological mechanism. Your brain as a prediction machine, as the biological system that generates your perception of reality based on its store a model of what reality is, will systematically filter out evidence that it contradicts its predictions, not as a conscious choice. It's an automatic below awareness operating function, which means that if your identity is organized around a version of yourself that is not fully believed she is the woman who's building at the level you are reaching for, your brain will not register the opportunities, the connections, the open doors that they're available at that level. Not because they're not there, because the prediction machine has not been updated to include them in the model of what is possible. And conversely, when you do not work on updating the identity, when you build the internal model of a woman who operates at the next level before the external evidence has arrived to confirm it, the brain begins to find what it's been trained to look for. The opportunities that they were always available become visible. The connections that they were always accessible become actual. The resources that they always exist begin to feel attainable rather than theoretical. This is not a wishful thinking. This is neuroscience of perception. And it means that the most leveraged investment you can make in the growth of your business is not a new strategy. It is the identity shift. The specific, deliberated, practice-based work of deciding who you are at the next level. And then living from that identity before the evidence gives you that permission. The decision precedes the evidence, always, and in that order, never the other way around. Requirement number 2, a nervous system that treats growth as safe. The second requirement is the one that bridges the spiritual and the biological in the way that I find the most compelling. and most practically actionable. Your nervous system is the operating environment of your business, not as a metaphor, but physiological, measurable reality. When your nervous system is in a state of chronic sympathetic activation, when the baseline of your internal experience is the low grade urgency, the background anxiety, the quiet but persistent sense that something is wrong or about to go wrong, it generates a very specific set of biological conditions: cortisol and adrenaline. They flood the system. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of strategic thinking, creativity, problem solving, and long range vision, goes partially offline. The threat detection systems go on high alert, and your perception of risk narrows and sharpens in a way that is extraordinarily useful if you are in a physical danger, and extraordinary counterproductive if you are trying to build a purpose driven business. From that state, you will undercharge. Because raising your prices produces a threat signal. You stay in the same content lane because full creativity risk feels dangerous. You over explain and over justify and over deliver because the possibility of a client being dissatisfied produces the same neurological alarm is an actual threat to your survival. And no amount of additional doing from that state will produce the growth at the level you're reaching for because the actions are being generated by a system that is in survival. In survival mode produces survival level results by design. The nervous system business work, the specific, the practice based discipline of learning to regulate your system out of a chronic activation and into the parasympathetic state where genuine creativity, strategy, clarity, and bigger vision becomes biologically available. It's not a wellness supplement to your business strategy. It is fundamental for your business strategy to work. A regulated nervous system prices from value, creates from overflow, leads from groundedness, makes decision from vision rather than from anxiety, and attracts clients and opportunities that they are consistent with that regulated state. Because the energy of a woman who is genuinely grounded in herself is not something the strategy can manufacture. It is something that the people she is called to serve can feel immediately. Your regulation, your most powerful business asset. And it does not require more doing. It requires more being, more stillness, more deliberated, intentional, practice-based, returning to the state the growth actually needs to happen from. Requirement number 3: offers that come from alignment, not anxiety. The third requirement is one that I want to spend time on because it's one of the most practically immediate, and because I watch talent genuinely call women leave revenue on the table season after season, not because their offers are wrong, but because of where the offer comes from. There is a specific quality to an offer that it was built from alignment, from the deep, clear, spiritually grounded sense. This is what I'm called to deliver to this specific woman in this specific level, because this is the transformation that I have been uniquely equipped to facilitate. An offer built from that place carries a particular energy, a coherence between what is promised and who is delivering it, a congruence that the person on the receiving end they might not be able to name, but that they feel immediately, in the clarity of the message, in the specific of the promise, in the sense that this person is not just selling something, but offering something that it is genuine, a specific, theirs to give. And then there is an offer that it was built from anxiety, from the watching of what is working for other people and the rapid reverse engineering of a version that it could work for you. From the fear that what you are genuinely called to deliver is too niche, too specific, too unusual, too much, and the resulting delusion of the offer into something more broadly, more safely, and more generic, less distinctively yours. From the urgency of needing revenue fast and building the offer around what it seems like it will sell rather than what you know you are meant to give. That offer might sell in the short term, but it does not build. Because an offer built from anxiety requires continuous effort to sustain. The selling is harder because the belief behind it is thinner. The delivery is heavier because it's not fully in your zone or your calling. And the client's attracts are calibrated to the anxiety that it was built from, which means that they are often not the clients who can receive the deepest version of what you're carrying, because the deepest version was never fully present in the offer that they say yes to. Alignment in your offer is not a spiritual luxury for when the revenue is stable enough to afford it. It is the specific structural quality that it makes the offer sustainable. That makes it easier to sell, easier to deliver, more effective in producing transformation, and more compelling in its ability to attract the exact women you are calling to serve. And it does not require more doing to develop. It requires more discernment, more willingness to release what is not fully yours in order to fully inhabit what is yours. If you are building offers and wonder why the selling feels hard, why the words are not landing the way you know they should, why the clients who come in are not the ones you picture when you started, the answer is not a copywriting problem. It is almost always an alignment problem. And alignment is an inside job to go to. So right now, go to therealnextlevel.com and apply if this is the conversation you have been needed. If you have been building offers and feeling the gap between what you're delivering and what you know you are called to deliver, and you are ready to close that gap with direction rather than doing it alone, fill out the application. I read every application because this work is real and so are you. Requirement number 4, consistency from identity, not from willpower. The 4th requirement is the one that solves consistency problem, and I want to address it directly because consistency is the variable that most entrepreneurs point when they are trying to explain why growth is not happening. I was consistent for a while and then I was not. I show up well in some seasons and then I fell off in others. The algorithm rewards consistency. I am not consistent enough. And all of that may be partially true, but I want to offer you a different frame for why consistency breaks down. Because the conventional explanation, discipline, habits, accountability, addresses the symptom without touching the cause. Consistency breaks down when the identity doing the work has not yet fully claimed the work as its own. When you are showing up consistently from willpower, not from the daily decision to override the resistance and do the thing because you know it matters. You are in continuous internal negotiation every day. The part of you that is tired, afraid, uncertain about whether this is working has to be argued with. Sweet talk, overriding. And that negotiation is metabolically expensive and it is not indefinitely sustainable. Eventually, in the moments when the willpower is depleted by everything else that is demanding it, the negotiation results in favor of the resistance and the consistency breaks. But when you are showing up from identity, when the work is so integrated into who you understand yourself to be, the showing up is not a decision you have to make each day, but simply what the woman you are does. The consistency is not maintained by effort. It is maintained by alignment. The woman who is a writer writes, not every day because she decides to commit to that habit of writing, but because writing writes is not separated from identity. It is an expression of it. And expressions of identity do not require willpower. They require clarity. Building that quality of consistency, the kind that it does not break under pressure, does not dissolve in seasons when motivation is low, does not require continuous accountability to sustain the work of that identity shift. Deciding repeatedly and deliberately that you are the woman who does this, not because you want to be, because you are. And what you are does not have to be earned each morning before every work day begins. Subscribe to this channel right now if you are not already, because this is the work that we're doing every single week. Building the identity that it makes consistency natural rather than forced. The growth sustainable rather than being in circles. You do not want to miss what is coming next. Subscribe and let's keep going. Now I want to get specific because it is one thing to say you don't need to do more to grow, and it is another to be able to look at your actual specific current business and identify exactly where the doing is happening in ways that they're not producing the growth and why. 5 signals. This is the specifics, the most recognized patterns that they will tell you the volume is high and the alignment is low. One of them, maybe all five, is operating in your business right now. Signal number one, high activity, low leverage. The first signal is the most straightforward and it shows up in the gap between how much you are doing and the effects of that doing are. Leverage is the quality of business activity that it produces results that it grow beyond the activity itself. Content that it continues to attract the right clients long after it's created. Offers that are priced at the level that it reflects the actual depth of the transformation. So the fewer transactions are needed to produce meaningful revenue. Systems that work while you're not working. Relationships that generate referrals without requiring continuous cultivation. Low leverage activity is the opposite. Content that requires continuous production to maintain any result. Offers price in a way that it requires volume to generate the revenue that aligned pricing will generate with far fewer clients. Networking that it stays transactional. Effort that produces result in direct proportion to the effort and it stops the moment that the effort does. Most entrepreneurs who feel like they're working too hard for too little return are not working too little. They are working in the wrong direction. They are producing high volume in low leverage activity, which is exhausting because it requires continuous reinvestment of the same energy to maintain any momentum at all. The question is not how to do more. The question is how to shift the activity towards what compounds, towards what continues to work when you step away, towards the offers and the content and the relationships that they're aligned enough with your genuine calling that they attract without being forced and convert without requiring continuous pressure. That shift is not a doing shift. It is a clarity shift. It comes from the willingness to stop doing the things that they feel productive but produce no compound return and invest that energy into the fewer, more aligned things that do. Signal number two, consumption without integration. The second signal is the one that is most common among high intelligent women who are curious and committed to growth. Consumption to integration ratio is completely out of balance. Courses purchased and not completed. Coaching investment and not implementing. Books read, highlighted, and taking notes and not applied in any way. That changed the behavior or the strategy or the identity of the reader. Podcasts consumed daily as a form of productivity theater. The feeling of learning without the metabolic cost of actually changing based on what is learned. This is not laziness. It is a form of subconscious blocks. Specifically, it is the way that a woman who is genuinely afraid of what full implementation will require of her. The visibility, the risk, the identity, the possibility of being seen, trying, and failing. That person can stay in motion without ever reaching the exposure point that the fear is protecting her from. Consuming more education feels like doing more. It feels productive in appearance. It generates the sense of progress, of moving forward in something, but the actual gap between knowledge and action remains unchanged. The woman who is consuming and not integrating does not need more information. She needs permission to implement what she already knows. She needs the internal safety, the nervous system regulation, the identity clarity, the belief revision. That makes full implementation feel survivable rather than terrifying. No additional course will provide that. No additional podcast, no additional amount of learning about what she should be doing will produce the feeling of safety that it will allow her to actually do it. The growth is not in the next piece of content that she consumed. It is in the next thing she fully implements from what she already has. Signal number three, performing productivity instead of producing results. The third signal is the one that is the hardest to say it out loud because it requires a particular quality of honesty that is not comfortable. There is a version of building a business that it looks from the outside and sometimes from the inside like serious, committed, high effort work. And that is, and it's actually a relationship to the results performance. The constant Instagram stories, documenting the process, the detailed content calendar that it takes longer to maintain than the content itself. The 2-hour morning routine that is positioning is a spiritual discipline, but is functioning is a delay mechanism. A way of filling the space that it will otherwise requires a thing that is actually being avoided. Performing productivity, it is the sophisticated strategy of a woman who is genuinely wants to build, but who has not yet developed the internal safety to fully inhabit the exposure the real building requires. So she builds the appearance of building. She maintains the motion, the visibility of effort, the surface level evidence of commitment, while the specific, vulnerable, genuine, courageous acts that it will actually move the needle remains perpetually on the tomorrow list. The fix is not more doing. The fix is the honesty of sitting with the question, what is the one thing that if I did it fully today will actually matter? And then asking, why am I not doing that? In following the answer, not a productivity solution, but to the fear or the belief of the womb that is making the real thing feel less safe than the performance of it. Signal number 4, doing from depletion. The fourth signal is the one your body already knows, the one that it has been communicating as present through exhaustion that it precedes the workday, the created flatness that it follows the most productive seasons, the loss of genuine excitement for work that you know in your conviction you are called to do. When you are doing from depletion, when the output is being generated from a system that is running on reserves rather than genuine overflow, the quality of everything changes. The content lands different. The coaching carries differently. The leadership feels different to the woman in your community. Something is technically present, but not fully alive. This is what I mean when I said that doing more from the wrong state does not produce more growth. The entrepreneur burnout pattern is not about health, it's about the strategy problem. Because the version of your work that is producing from depletion is fundamentally different product than the version produced from genuine creativity and spiritual fullness. And the results it generates are different. The conversation rates are different. The client satisfaction is different. The referrals. You are not selling the same thing from depletion that you are selling from overflow. You are selling a lesser version of it and charging the same price for both. And wonder why the results are not consistent. The answer is not more consistency of output. It is more consistency of a state. And a state is not managed by doing more, but by protecting more. The practice, the rest, the restoration, the non-negotiable periods of return to the source from which the work is supposed to flow. Signal number 5, growth that it comes and goes. The fifth signal is the most clarifying one. And if you have been building for any length of time, you have experienced this. The season of momentum, when something clicks, when the content is landing, when the clients are coming, when the business feels like it's moving in the direction that it was always supposed to move, followed by inexplicable contraction, the plateau, the season where the same level of effort produces a fraction of the result, where the thing that it was working is stopped working without a clear external reason, where the growth that it felt like it was finally building the foundation begins to feel like another cycle and a pattern that you cannot fully interrupt. This is the growth contraction cycle that subconscious blocks produce, and it has a very specific mechanism. The growth takes you towards the level, the identity ceiling, the specific belief about what is possible for someone like you has set at the maximum. And when you approach that ceiling, the subconscious systems that it maintains consistency between your identity and your reality begin to correct. Not consciously, not as a choice. It's the automatic maintenance function of a system designed to keep your external reality aligned with your internal model of what is appropriate. The correction looks like the inspiring content that it was flowing, it goes flat. The confidence that it was carrying the selling conversation, it goes quiet. The energy that it was powering the visibility retreats, and the growth that it was happening, it stops happening. Not because the market changed, not because the strategy failed, not because the platform shifted, but because the identity ceiling was reached. And the correction brought the results back in line with the self-concept. More doing does not break through an identity ceiling. More believing does. More healing does. More deliberate, specific practice, expansion of the internal model does. The breakthrough is not above the ceiling, it's through it. And the way through it is not effort, it's excavation. Think of a woman in your world who is in the growth contraction cycle right now, who is building and then pulling back, who cannot quite sustain the level that she's reaching for, who needs this conversation. Share this episode with her today, not as a recommendation, but as a gift, because she needs this and she might not know the specific language for what is happening to her yet. This is the language. Share it. Now, the practice, because this community does not stay undiagnosed. We build the prescription together. If the answer to growth is not more doing, if more activity from the wrong state and the wrong identity is not the path, then what is it? What does the reorientation actually look like when it lands in the schedule, in the offers, in the content, in the daily building of the business? For practice is specific and you can implement them. Not additions to an already full plate, replacements for the activities that you haven't produced in volume without growth. Practice number 1, excavate before you execute. Before every significant business decision, before the new offer, the new content, the new visibility strategy, the price increase, the launch, excavate. Not strategize, excavate, which means going inward before going outward. Asking not what is the right move, but what is the aligned move. Not what it will work for me at this level, but what is true for me in this season, in this direction, with this specific calling. The excavation practice is not long. It does not require a retreat or an extended period of introspection, but it requires a quality of honest internal information that most entrepreneurs bypass in the urgency to execute. 2 questions. Bring them to every significant decision. First, is this coming from alignment or anxiety? Is this move being generated by the genuine, clear, grounded sense of calling or by the fear of falling behind, by the comparison to someone else's progress, the urgency to produce visible results in the season where the invisible work has not yet surfaced? Second, does the woman that I'm calling myself to become make this move? Not the woman that I am today, with all the fear and the uncertainty and the still healing places. The woman on the other side of the growth that I'm building towards. Does she take this action? If the answer is yes, then take it from that identity before the evidence has arrived to confirm it. This is the decision framework that it produces the aligned execution. Not more planning, more truthful before the plan. Practice number 2, replace volume with depth. The second practice is the one that it directly addresses the leverage gap. Instead of producing more content, go deeper into fewer pieces. Instead of launching more offers, go more fully into the one offer that is more aligned with your calling. Instead of reaching more people, go more specifically to the exact woman you are most called to serve. The spiritual entrepreneur who published one piece of deep aligned, genuine, transformative content per week will outconvert the entrepreneur who published 5 pieces of broadly relevant content from depletion. Not because the algorithm favors it, though it often does, because watch time and engagement reflect the quality of attention an audience brings to the content that it has actually moved them, but because the depth it was produced, the genuine transformation in the person receiving it. In genuine transformation, it produces referrals, testimonials, return clients, community growth, in the kind of word of mouth that no pay strategy can replicate. This is not permission to publish less from laziness. It is a reorientation of the energy. The energy that it was producing 5 pieces of content that it requires continuous pushing to sustain can produce now 1 piece that it has the weight, the fullness, and the specific earned authority of a woman who was not trying to stay visible, who was trying to serve at the level that she's actually called to serve. That piece does not require pushing. It carries itself because it's coming from the place the real content is supposed to come from. Practice number 3, invest in the state before strategy. The third practice is the one that it has the highest return of any practice I have ever seen in this work. And it is the one that is most systematically underinvested by women who have been taught that productivity is the primary currency of growth. Before the strategy session, invest in the state. Before you sit down to create the content, to price the offer, to write the sales page, invest first in arriving at the internal state from which the best version of those activities is possible. Not as a luxury that happens when the calendar is light, is the non-negotiable first activity of every significant business session. This looks different for every woman. For some, it is a prayer, real, receptive prayer. Not the performative version, but the kind where you actually quiet yourself enough to listen. For some, it is breath work or movement or the specific somatic practice that it brings the nervous system from activation into regulation. For some, it's journaling. That is not task planning. The writing that asks what is true for me today and follows the answer wherever it leads. The investment is not long. 15 minutes of genuine estate management before 90 minutes content creation session will produce more aligned, more effective, more genuine compelling content than 2 hours of forced output from a state of chronic activation. Because the state is the source. Intending the source before drawing from it is not inefficiency. It is the highest form of a strategic investment to a woman who is built from the inside out. Practice number 4. Measure actually matters. The 4th practice is the one that it changes what you pay attention to. And what you pay attention to, it determines what grows. Most entrepreneurs measure activity metrics. Post publishes, email sent, hours worked, revenue generated this month versus last month, follower count, open rates, click-through rates, the numbers that are most immediately visible and most continuously available, and therefore most continuously demanding of attention. And those metrics matter, but they are downstream metrics. They are the surface expression of something that is happening much further upstream in the internal architecture, in the alignment of the offer, in the regulation state, in the depth of the identity that is doing the building. Start measuring upstream. Ask different questions. How aligned did this offer feel right now? Not intellectually, in my body. When I record the content, am I in the state of genuine overflow or depletion? When I made the last 3 significant business decisions, what was the internal state that I made them from? How fully do I believe? Not as aspiration, but as an operating premises that I am the woman who grows at the level that I'm building towards. These questions do not produce clean numbers. They produce honest self-knowledge. In honest self-knowledge, the specific, the unflinched awareness of where the internal alignment is high and where it has been compromised is the data that it actually predicts what is the downstream metrics will look like the next quarter. Measure upstream, invest upstream, the downstream will reflect it. The coaching I offer at therealnextlevel.com is built entirely around the upstream work, the excavation that it happens before the strategy, the identity renovation that precedes the offer rebuilt, the nervous system work that it makes the marketing actually land. If you are ready for the upstream conversation, if you have been measuring the downstream long enough and you are ready to address what is actually generating it, apply. Tell me where you are. The application is simple, the conversation is real, and the work changes everything that it comes after. I want to close the teaching section of this episode by painting the picture because I know that for some of you, specifically the women who have been in the grind the longest, who have the most deeply conditioned association between effort and worthiness, the concept of growing without more doing does not just feel counterintuitive, it feels unsafe, like giving something up that it has been holding the whole structure together. And I want to show you what is on the other side. Not as an inspiration, it's a map. The woman who grows without grinding, it still works. Let that be the first thing I establish. She's not passive. She's not small. She's not playing it safe or producing at a fraction of her capacity. She is in many ways producing more than she ever produced in the grind, but from completely different relationship to the producing. She has learned the specific critical difference between busy and effective, between activity and leverage, between the motion that it feels like progress and the motion that it actually is. And she has made the deliberated, sometimes painful choice to release the former in service of the latter, to stop filling the calendar with the doing that it keeps her visible and to fill it instead with the doing that it actually moves the needle. Even when, especially when that doing requires more courage and less comfort than the alternative. She has an identity that is stable enough to absorb the failure without fracturing. When the lounge underperforms, she does not conclude that the problem is her. She concludes that the lounge produced data and she works with the data. This is not the confidence of someone who has never failed. It's the groundedness of a woman who has done enough internal work to know that her worth and her results are separated and that the results are always workable. She moves at the pace of alignment rather than pace of comparison. She is not unaware of what others are building, but she's no longer governed by it. The timeline of the woman beside her is not her timeline. The strategy that is working for another woman across the industry is not necessarily her strategy. She has developed through practice and through excavation of the beliefs that they were governing her before she examined in them a genuine trust, a specific path at her, a specific calling, and she moves at that pace. That path requires no faster, no keep up, because she has healed herself. Not the slower to stay safe, but at the exact pace that it produces the quality of foundation she knows that the building requires. Her energetic alignment is the primary driver of her growth, not her posting schedule, not her funnel, not her email list or her followers count. Those things matter, and she tends to them with skill, with consistency. But she knows that the numbers downstream of her state will always reflect the quality of her state. That a regulated woman with a deeply aligned offer and a clear identity will consistently outperform the depleted woman with the better strategy. Not sometimes, it's structurally every season. And she has made peace, real embodied, genuine peace, with the seasons that they look like nothing from the outside. The quarters of preparations, the periods of deep root growth that it produces no visible shoot above the surface. She has been in this long enough and she has done enough of the internal work to trust that the invisible seasons are not failed seasons. They are the seasons that everything visible is built upon. She has stopped growing her business into a next level she is growing herself into, trusting that the business, like any living thing that is rooted in real soil, will follow. That is not theory. It is a lived experience available to every woman in this community who is willing to stop investing primarily on the surface and start excavating the root. That woman is not distant aspiration. She is who you become when you stop doing more and start being deeper. And deeper is not a retreat from ambition. It is the foundation that ambition finally can actually build upon. I want to leave you with a permission statement, not an action item, not a homework assignment, a permission. You're allowed to grow without grinding. You're allowed to produce less and receive more. When the less is more aligned, more specific, more deeply yours than the more ever was, you're allowed to invest in your state before your strategy, to tend the root before the leaves, to be the woman who builds from fullness rather than from the fear that the fullness will never arrive if you slow down enough to feel it. You're allowed to trust the calling more than the calendar, to believe that the vision you carry is held by something larger than the output, that something larger is not going to abandon it because you took a breath. That permission is not laziness. It is not the absence of drive. It is the most advanced and most courageous form of entrepreneurship available to a woman who's building something that is actually meant to last. Take it, it's yours. 3 things before you go. If today's episode shifted something, if the permission landed somewhere real, if the framework gave you words for something that you have been carrying, like this video right now, one tap. Because this content is built for the woman who's working too hard in the wrong direction. And she is everywhere in this community, and your one tap is how she finds this conversation. leave a comment with the words "I grow from alignment," because that is the declaration of a woman who has decided to stop measuring her commitment by exhaustion. If you are ready to stop adding to the doing and start excavating what the doing has been covering, go to therealnextlevel.com and apply. Tell me where you are. Tell me what the grind has cost you. Tell me what you're building and why you know underneath of all of it that there has to be another way. I read every application and I am looking for the woman who is done doing more and ready to become more instead. Subscribe if you are not already, because this is where the real conversation lives every week without apology. Is stop doing more, is start being deeper. And I will see you on the next episode. Yellow diamonds in the light.